The Seine River flowing like wine, deep crimson, thick with the blood of fallen knights. Elite Frankish warriors, draped in their most magnificent battle gear, now drowning beneath its surface. A massive French military force scrambling in pure panic away from a simple wooden crossing. And right there, standing victorious on that very bridge, are just 40 Viking warriors, axes gleaming, laughter echoing across the carnage. Think this sounds like Hollywood fiction? A myth inflated over centuries? Dead wrong. This nightmare actually unfolded at Pont de l'Arche in 885 AD. Before the sun dropped below the horizon, thousands of France's finest soldiers would either be corpses in the Seine, or survivors haunted by visions of unkillable Norse demons. The cause of this catastrophe? Merely 40 defenders on a single bridge. You're about to witness one of warfare's most statistically impossible victories, a conflict so brutally lopsided that medieval historians genuinely believe divine forces must have intervened. But here's the kicker, the actual truth surpasses any supernatural explanation. Ready to discover how 40 warriors humiliated an empire and rewrote European destiny? Let's plunge into arguably the most insane military engagement ever recorded. And hey, before we storm into this bloodbath together, if you're captivated by these jaw-dropping historical moments, where reality defied every logical prediction, smash that subscribe button and activate notifications. Because I promise you, the battles coming up on this channel only get more mind-blowing from here. The late 800s, the Frankish Empire supposedly reigned as Christianity's mightiest kingdom across Europe. Yet they faced one catastrophic nightmare they couldn't solve: Vikings. These Northmen had spent decades terrorizing French lands, and their strategy had evolved dramatically. No longer satisfied with quick hit and run raids, they were establishing fortified strongholds along French waterways. The Seine River had essentially transformed into their personal superhighway, delivering them straight into France's vulnerable core. November 885 arrives with devastating news: a colossal Viking armada, 700 longships carrying roughly 30,000 battle-hardened warriors, has begun strangling Paris itself. Leading this invasion? The legendary chieftain Rollo, yes, that Rollo, who'd eventually become Normandy's founding duke. These weren't opportunistic pirates anymore. This represented a calculated conquest. Paris was hanging by its fingernails. Count Odo, the city's desperate defender, commanded maybe 200 total troops protecting the entire metropolis. The Vikings had unleashed everything imaginable: siege towers scraping the sky, battering rams pounding gates, even attempting to literally fill the Seine with rubble to create a marching path. Yet somehow, Paris refused to collapse. Not yet anyway. Here's where our story takes its fascinating turn. Maintaining a siege for months demands constant resources, food, weaponry, construction materials. So Viking raiding parties scattered across the countryside, gathering supplies while terrorizing locals into total submission. One particularly vital position they secured was the river crossing at Pont de l'Arche, roughly 100 kilometers northwest of besieged Paris. This wasn't some random footbridge. Pont de l'Arche controlled Seine River crossings at an absolutely critical juncture. Whoever commanded this bridge dictated how armies and supply trains moved throughout the entire region. The Vikings had seized it early, then stationed 40 of their absolute finest warriors to maintain control. Now 40 soldiers probably sounds laughably inadequate, right? But these weren't typical medieval conscripts. These were hand-picked Viking champions and berserkers, survivors of countless raids and pitched battles. Warriors operating under the religious conviction that glorious battlefield death guaranteed them seats in Valhalla, feasting eternally beside Odin. In pure combat effectiveness, each one matched 10 ordinary soldiers. Let me paint you a picture of these specific defenders. According to Frankish historical records, the bridge garrison answered to a massive warrior, nicknamed Bjorn Ironside, not the famous Ragnar's son, but another fighter who'd earned that title by allegedly taking an arrow directly through his chest, yet continuing to slaughter enemies. His lieutenant went only by the Raven, a berserker who ritually painted his face with ash and blood before combat, reportedly feeling zero pain once battle frenzy consumed him. We need to address what berserkers truly were, because popular media completely butchers this. Berserk derives from bear shirt. These fighters wore bear or wolf hides into battle and entered what eyewitnesses documented as inhuman fury states. They'd howl like wild beasts, bite down on their shields, foam at their mouths, appearing utterly immune to injury. One Arab chronicler who personally observed berserkers in action recorded, they charged forward armorless, mad as rabid dogs or wolves, gnawed their shields, possessed the strength of bears or enraged bulls. They killed men with single strikes, yet neither flames nor blades seemed to harm them. Modern historical analysis offers fascinating explanations. Some scholars believe berserkers consumed psychoactive mushrooms, specifically Amanita muscaria, those distinctive red and white spotted fungi growing throughout Scandinavia. These would trigger hallucinations, amplified strength, severely reduced pain perception, and the reality disconnection witnesses described. Alternative theories point toward henbane, a plant causing violent rage, delirium, and seemingly superhuman power, combined with dangerous unpredictability. But here's the truly terrifying possibility. Recent research suggests something even more powerful might explain it. A deliberately induced psychological state achieved through ritual and intensive training. These warriors would dance, chant, and hyperventilate themselves into trance conditions. They literally rewired their neurological responses, shutting down pain receptors and fear mechanisms. Imagine a controlled psychotic episode, weaponized into a perfect killing state. They called this Berserker Gang, the Berserker's Walk. Once triggered, they couldn't differentiate allies from enemies, which explains why fellow Vikings maintained careful distance during their fury. The symptoms remained consistent across hundreds of documented accounts, faces shifting color from pale to purple with rage, eyes bulging and rolling backward, uncontrollable trembling before explosive violence erupted with impossible strength. After the battle fury burned out, complete exhaustion lasting days. Some modern scholars compare it to extreme PTSD episodes, except these warriors had mastered triggering and weaponizing them deliberately. These 40 defenders represented hand-picked veterans from the great heathen army that had terrorized England for years before crossing to France. They'd fought at York, Reading, Ashdown. They'd locked shields against Saxon kings and lived to boast about it. Many carried scars from 20, 30, even 40 separate engagements. In Viking culture, these scars represented honor badges, tangible proof the gods had tested them and judged them worthy. Their weaponry was legendary. Viking smiths had perfected pattern welding techniques, creating steel so exquisite that Arab scholars composed poetry about Norse blades. Their axes weren't crude chopping tools, they were precision-balanced death instruments capable of splitting shields and the warriors behind them in single swings. Some carried bearded axes with extended lower blades designed to hook enemy shields, yanking them aside to expose vulnerable targets. Enter King Charles the Fat, and yes, that was genuinely his official title. Charles wasn't exactly military genius material. Contemporary chronicles portray him as indecisive, slow to react, more comfortable negotiating than fighting. But his generals convinced him that recapturing Pont de l'Arche would sever Viking supply lines and potentially force them to abandon Paris entirely. So Charles assembled approximately 3,000 to 4,000 soldiers, heavy cavalry, infantry, local militia forces. A significant chunk of the royal military. When Frankish scouts reported back, "Your Majesty, merely 40 Vikings hold that bridge," Charles likely chuckled. 40 against 4,000? They'd finish before lunchtime. Battle morning arrived with the Frankish army approaching in full ceremonial formation, knights in chainmail, armored war horses, banners rippling. They anticipated the Vikings would scatter at such overwhelming numerical superiority. Instead, those 40 Vikings did something unexpected. They formed a shield wall at the bridge's narrow entrance and began rhythmically hammering weapons against shields, roaring war songs. They were extending an invitation to attack. Pont de l'Arche's bridge measured perhaps 4 meters wide. That's it. Wide enough for a merchant cart, narrow enough that only a handful of fighters could engage simultaneously. The Franks couldn't leverage their numerical advantage. They couldn't execute flanking maneuvers. They couldn't encircle. They had to advance straight forward, a few at a time, directly into waiting Viking axes. The initial Frankish charge featured mounted knights, medieval warfare's elite class. They thundered toward the bridge, lances leveled. But warhorses won't charge into spear and axe walls. The Vikings had planted long spears into the ground, creating a lethal forest of points. Horses balked, reared, threw riders. Knights who managed to dismount and attack on foot met Viking axes head-on. Here's something crucial about Viking combat that most people miss. These men trained from childhood. A Viking warrior could swing his battle axe for hours without fatigue. They wore lighter armor than Frankish knights, granting superior speed and agility. And they fought with profound psychological advantage. They craved glorious death. The Franks wanted to survive and return home. The first knight reaching the Viking shield wall was Surgon of Tours, a veteran of countless battles against Breton forces. Witnesses claim he survived exactly 3 sword exchanges before a Viking axe decapitated him cleanly. His severed head, still wearing its expensive helmet, rolled backward down the bridge approach, stopping at the feet of the next attack wave. The psychological devastation was instantaneous. The Viking fighting technique at that bridge was brutally magnificent. They fought in synchronized pairs, one warrior with shield and sword protecting a partner wielding a two-handed axe. The shield bearer would deflect and block, while the axemen delivered crushing strikes. When one pair tired, they'd seamlessly rotate out for fresh fighters. This wasn't chaotic individual combat, it was choreographed death perfected through years of practice. Then, roughly an hour into the battle, something occurred that would haunt Frankish survivors permanently. 3 Viking berserkers simultaneously entered their battle fury. Eyewitness accounts describe what followed as nightmare incarnate. These 3 warriors stripped off their armor and charged off the bridge directly into the massed Frankish ranks. They moved with such speed and struck with such force that they carved a bloody corridor 20 meters deep before stunned soldiers could even react. One berserker, drenched in so much blood he appeared painted crimson, was observed lifting a fully armored knight overhead and hurling him into the river. Another absorbed 5 spear thrusts and continued fighting, laughing as he extracted the spears and turned them against his attackers. The third literally bit through a Frankish soldier's throat like a predator, the man's screams dissolving into gurgles as the berserker spat out flesh chunks and advanced toward his next victim. These 3 killed dozens before finally being brought down, and even then, Franks had to literally hack them into pieces because they wouldn't stop fighting despite mortal wounds. The bridge of death, the bridge transformed into a meat grinder. As Frankish soldiers pushed forward, they climbed over their own fallen comrades. Wooden planks became treacherously slick with blood. Men slipped, collapsed, and were butchered before regaining their feet. The Vikings rotated their front line, maintaining fresh combatants at the shield wall, while wounded warriors bandaged injuries and returned to fight. After the first hour, Frankish corpses piled so high they formed a literal barrier. The Vikings would drag bodies aside just enough to create killing gaps, then slam axes into anyone attempting to climb through. One Frankish chronicle documents a Viking warrior personally killing over 20 men, his axe maintaining its deadly rhythm without pause. Frankish generals attempted alternative tactics. Archers were deployed, but thick oak Viking shields easily stopped arrows on the predictable narrow bridge. They tried setting the bridge ablaze, but Vikings had pre-soaked the timbers with river water. Every strategy failed against simple reality. You could only engage a few men simultaneously, and those few were Europe's most skilled warriors. Around midday, something extraordinary occurred. The Vikings began singing, not war chants, actual songs. Ballads about heroes crossing the rainbow bridge to Valhalla, about Odin's ravens feasting on slain warriors, about the glory awaiting those who died weapon in hand. The singing rose above clashing steel and dying screams. To increasingly demoralized Frankish troops, it seemed like the Vikings were celebrating their own funeral and enjoying it. One 16-year-old Frankish soldier later testified to monks that he watched a Viking absorb 3 crossbow bolts to his chest and keep fighting. The warrior only stopped when a 4th bolt pierced his throat, and even then, he killed one more Frankish soldier before collapsing. These stories spread through Frankish ranks like plague. How do you combat men indifferent to death? How do you break warriors who view dying as reward? The Frankish cavalry, medieval warfare's pride, proved completely useless. The bridge approach was so congested with dead and wounded that horses couldn't even reach combat. Knights who'd invested fortunes in armor and weapons stood in lines, awaiting their turn to die on Viking axes. Medieval warfare's social hierarchy meant nothing on that narrow bridge. Peasant conscripts and noble knights perished identically. There's a detail that truly captures this battle's horror. The Vikings assigned one warrior whose sole job was kicking corpses off the bridge into the river to maintain fighting space. This man calmly, methodically grabbed Frankish bodies by their armor and heaved them over the side while his comrades continued fighting meters away. The splash of bodies hitting water became rhythmic. Splash. Scream. Axe strike. Splash. Survivors reported this sound haunted their nightmares for years. The Vikings also deployed psychological warfare unfamiliar to Franks. They deliberately left wounded enemies alive but crippled, knowing their screams would demoralize comrades. They hung captured Frankish banners upside down from the bridge, a massive medieval warfare insult. One Viking wore a necklace fashioned from Frankish fingers, adding a fresh one after each kill. These weren't merely warriors, they were terror artists. At one point, Frankish priests arrived carrying holy relics, chanting prayers. They believed God would shield them and inspire troops. The Vikings let them approach closely, then one berserker leaped from the bridge, landed among them, and slaughtered all 6 priests in under a minute. He then calmly walked back through hundreds of stunned Frankish soldiers too terrified to attack. The message was crystal clear: your God holds no authority here. The battle had another element medieval chroniclers struggled describing: the smell. The combination of blood, released bowels, river mud, and fierce sweat created a stench so overpowering that soldiers vomited before reaching combat. The Vikings, seemingly immune, actually taunted Franks about it, asking if they were sick from fear or just weak stomachs. This psychological dominance broke spirits before Viking axes broke bodies. Perhaps the most revealing detail, when King Charles attempted motivating troops with a personal appearance riding forward in finest armor surrounded by his royal guard within sight of the bridge, the Vikings responded by turning their backs and dropping their pants, showing bare asses to France's king. Then, they resumed killing. The insult was so profound that several Frankish nobles immediately abandoned the battlefield in shame, taking their men. By noon, the Frankish army was disintegrating. Soldiers refused orders to charge. Some units openly retreated. King Charles, observing from a nearby hill, couldn't comprehend how 40 men were annihilating his army. Then, something happened that transformed defeat into absolute catastrophe. A rumor spread through Frankish ranks, probably started by fleeing soldiers justifying cowardice. They claimed the Vikings were unkillable, that they were demons or trolls in human form, that their axes carried pagan curses. Panic spread like wildfire. Suddenly, orderly retreat became complete rout. Here's where things got catastrophic for the Franks. In their panic, hundreds of soldiers attempted fording the Seine River rather than waiting for safer crossings. But the Seine in late 885 was cold, fast-flowing, swollen with autumn rains. Knights in heavy chainmail sank like stones, panicked horses drowned with their riders. More Franks died in that river than on the bridge itself. The Vikings, witnessing the rout, didn't even pursue. They stood on their bridge covered in blood, surrounded by mountains of Frankish corpses, and sang victory songs. They'd won so completely that chasing fleeing enemies would have been beneath them. But here's a detail most histories omit. As Franks fled, the Vikings performed a ritual that terrified survivors even more. They began dedicating the dead to Odin, marking bodies with runes and hanging weapons from trees as offerings. To Christian Franks, this resembled devil worship. Survivors later claimed they witnessed ravens descending from nowhere to feed on the dead, Odin's own birds claiming their sacrifice. The Vikings also demonstrated complete confidence and contempt for their enemies by sending one man, a single warrior, to the Frankish camp with a message. This warrior walked alone through thousands of demoralized French soldiers, delivered his message directly to King Charles, and walked back unharmed. Nobody dared touch him. The message was simple: the bridge remains ours. Send more men if you have them to spare. The statistics are staggering. Historical accounts vary, but most agree between 1,500 and 2,000 Frankish soldiers died that day, either on the bridge or drowning in the Seine. That's half the attacking army. Viking losses? Between 5 and 8 men. Let me emphasize that. 40 Vikings killed or caused the deaths of up to 2,000 professional soldiers while losing maybe 8 of their own. King Charles the Fat's response to this disaster? He didn't attempt retaking the bridge, he didn't rally forces for another assault. Instead, he paid the Vikings 700 pounds of silver to leave Paris alone. That's right, after losing half his army, he paid them to go away. They took the silver and raided other French regions instead. The political consequences were devastating. Frankish nobility lost all respect for Charles the Fat. Within 2 years, he'd be deposed and the Carolingian Empire would effectively end. The Vikings, emboldened by victory, would continue raiding France for decades. Rollo, the Viking leader, would eventually be granted Normandy by the French king just to stop his raids. His descendant, William the Conqueror, would invade England in 1066, changing history forever. But consider what this battle genuinely means. 40 men altered European history's trajectory. They proved courage, skill, and tactical advantage could overcome seemingly impossible odds. They demonstrated that numbers mean nothing if you can't effectively deploy them. And they showed the psychological power of warriors who genuinely don't fear death. The bridge at Pont de l'Arche still exists today, rebuilt many times, naturally, but local legends claim that on foggy mornings, you can still hear axes clashing on shields and the death cries of Frankish knights. Whether that's true remains debatable, but one fact is absolute. On that day in 885 AD, 40 Vikings proved that sometimes the impossible is precisely what happens. The lesson here transcends military tactics or Viking ferocity. It's about how the right individuals in the right location, with the right mindset, can overcome any odds. Those 40 Vikings weren't superhuman. They were simply men who understood their advantages, maintained their position, and refused to break. They transformed geography into strategy, psychology into weaponry, and legend into reality. And that's how 40 Vikings obliterated half of France's army and reshaped European history's course. All because they held a bridge.